What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the MG YouTube channel. I'm Malachi Grubb, CEO of Elite Automation, Big Properties, and an investor in Tesla. So I want to talk to you guys about robotaxi and kind of what I foresee after, Tesla's done the robotaxi launch. Honestly, I probably watched more robotaxi content than almost anybody in the world. Hard stop. By the way, we're in FSD in the Cybertruck right now, just so you know. But I probably watched more robotaxi footage. Yeah, that's weird. They don't ever normally do that. Yeah, just because I happened to be going on a business trip, and I drove the business trip and had all day to kind of watch robotaxi footage and whatnot, and basically get like a true real world. Like a lot of the stuff that I watched was live feed, unedited. And like one of the biggest things that I really want to point out is you have like your Tesla bulls and you have your Tesla bears, which basically means people who like love Tesla and people who hate Tesla, who are making content, right, and being very vocal. But I feel like there's not a lot of in between. Again, I am a Tesla bull, so I'm going to be a little bit more biased on believing that Tesla is going to be the way of the future. But I also see a lot of individuals kind of just like saying this is it, they've done it, they're there, blah blah blah. And yes, they've hit a major milestone, and that is very, very true. And what they have accomplished is definitely being underestimated by the bears or the haters of Tesla. You see like headlines that like swerves into other lane, hard braking, blah 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 things, right? And like each one of those things were not a critical incidents, yet headline-wise, they're being made out to be a very critical incident. So that's one thing to like pay attention with Tesla, is that like there's a lot of things that are made out to be like critical incidences that are not true critical incidences whatsoever. Maybe they're a little bit jarring, maybe they're a little bit scary for some people, but again, not critical whatsoever. And like even like the one that you'll hear about, like it going into the wrong lane, like it didn't really go into the wrong lane. I mean, it kind of did, but basically it was trying to follow another vehicle that was going left, and then it decided it didn't need to go left, it needed to go straight. And so like whenever it went straight, it kind of just stayed in the wrong lane a little bit. I mean, really all the way, but it was in the wrong lane, but there was no oncoming traffic or anything like that. If it would have seen oncoming traffic, it would have immediately diverted over to the next lane. So there was no safety concerns. And I let FSD go to its fullest and test out just about any scenario. Like even right there where the vehicle was acting weird, like I didn't disengage, right? I just gave it gas and forced it to go forward. And then I just pay attention to what it does. That's the way I like to test FSD, and I let it go through some like very critical things. Even Jenna doesn't like some of the things that I let it do, just because like maybe like more probably to like social norms more than anything, like like worried about like the driver behind you because you're not taking off fast enough type of thing or something like that. That's just like a generic example. Whereas I really don't care what the people around think, because I need to see how it's going to react, even if it's delayed a little bit or whatever. But the major thing that we seen obviously was that they were able to launch robotaxi with no drivers in the seat, and they did have a safety passenger. And I think at this point in time, like that's completely okay. They're showcasing that the vehicle can drive autonomously, and even though there is a safety driver there, it doesn't seem the safety driver is ever intervening, right? So this might mean they're also testing the back end for the back end teleoperators, the remote teleoperators. And so they want somebody physical there just in case like they lose connection to the vehicle or just whatever, right? Again, like people will bash, Tesla for like being unsafe and they shouldn't be on the road because they're so unsafe. But then they'll also bash them on the same thing for having a safety rider in the car. So, it's kind of a backhanded thing that people are doing on the bear side of things. Now on the bull side of things, again, people are just like kind of overhyping it, like we've already accomplished it, like it's already there. And we did pave a major milestone that put us to where Now we're much more confidently there, but we're still not there yet, right? A couple of things that we're going to need to see is, and I'm speaking kind of as an investor, is that we need to see the geofence start to expand. We need to see some type of growth, whether it be growth of vehicles, growth of geofenced area, or removal of safety driver. Now, I think removal of safety driver will give the most immediate economical impact as far as like, you know, being able to raise the stock price and stuff like that. However, I think increasing the geofenced area and increasing the number of vehicles is more important. And the geofenced area, I say that because if you remove the safety driver, one thing that you run into is that Tesla's going to have this weird scenario where this geofenced area that we're currently working in has no safety drivers, and then we open up another area, a new geofenced area in Austin, or expand on the current geofenced area, and how are you going to, because that new geofenced area is going to have safety riders again, most likely. Okay, and so then somebody's going to choose a ride from the old geofenced area to the new geofenced area, and only a vehicle that has a rider available in it is going to be able to come pick up that person. So then they're going to have to do something weird on the back end where they say, like, this vehicle has a safety rider and this vehicle doesn't have a safety rider. And maybe it's not that complicated for them, but again, I think that's something that they would have to work around, and just creates more complications versus let's expand that area, you know, continue testing that area with safety riders. Again, the safety riders adds a safety level that removes liability from the company for now. It's safe for humans, right? It's the safest thing to do for humans while we're testing out this new technology and confirming and validating that it's functionally ready, and that there's not going to be any major accidents or collisions or anything like that. So, kind of going back to them needing to expand, definitely the challenge with them expanding is that they have to have more safety riders, right? So if they expand vehicles, is what I was getting at. If they're expanding vehicles, then they're going to have more safety riders, and that becomes challenging because who knows, like, what qualifications that person has to have to be a safety rider. Are they using like existing Tesla engineers? Are they using existing Tesla production workers? Are they using guys just off the street? So like that's one of the big things. Like either way, like if they're using just random people, which I doubt they're doing because the liability of it, even though they're kind of just doing a simple task and not doing anything major really at all, because the vehicle's driving itself. You probably could put a McDonald's worker in there and be okay, but I just don't think that Tesla would do that. Also, on top of that, like after all their daily rides, they may maybe even in between rides, like whenever there's not somebody taking a robo taxi and the safety rider is going like to the next pickup location, they might be taking down notes saying, okay, this is what I experienced in this drive. I did this jerky thing. We was on, 4th Street and this happened, and kind of just like documenting really closely, like all the different weird things that happened, maybe documenting what passengers are saying. So that way they can take these feedbacks back to the lab and be able to kind of refine on those things and correct things and all that. So that's why they might need somebody who's a little bit more skilled, besides like just having somebody's like life in your hands type of thing. But so you just really run into the challenges of expanding if you have to hire a bunch of safety riders, and on top of that, they're technically going to be temporary individuals unless those safety riders are then going to become teleoperators. And so at first, the safety riders are just, it's kind of like a transition period. Hey, we're going to hire you as a safety rider. After the safety rider period's over, we're going to turn you into a teleoperator. That might be highly likely on like how they kind of transition to, you know, the next phases of, you know, robotaxi. Now, when it comes to the geofenced area, I think that one's an easy one for them to expand on. I don't know what the challenge would be. Now, there are some vehicles running around, Tesla vehicles with like high definition sensory, like LiDAR maybe even potentially, basically mapping out the roads and stuff in that area. Now, I don't know if that's just validation or if they're having to do some type of mapping, you know, via LiDAR to get true measurements of the world. Which I kind of need to talk on that as well, which is another thing. But so they're doing that, and point being is that might be one of the challenges for opening up geofences at this moment. So then, like, that's the next thing I'll get into is that I kind of talk about that LiDAR thing and them seeming like they're mapping out things.
Good morning, what can I get for you today?
Pick up for Jenna.
Full forward.
Thank you. And with them doing the current road mapping thing, it's like a little bit scary because, you know, that's one of the big things that how's it going? Thanks, bro.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the last auto mode you guys set on?
We build like robotic manufacturing equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Have a good day. Where's that? Oh, it's a little bit scary because, you know, like, this is one of the big things that, like, Tesla wasn't supposed to be geofenced, and they're, you know, not necessarily supposed to map out the area. However, what I'll say is most likely the scenario is that Tesla is doing this as a temporary fix. And also potentially validation, right? Maybe they're comparing the AI model with, like, the camera saying this is how far something is away, and then how much is, like, a LiDAR saying it's away, right? So you're, like, cross-comparing data to see, that was pretty good today. You're cross-comparing data to see, you know, how good one is versus the other. Or not how good one is versus the other, but you're just checking that data to see if your measurements are accurate, right? And so that's one thing, is this validation. And so if they're just doing validation only, then, like, that has no meaning on if, you know, robotaxi can scale into other cities without doing mapping. By the way, earlier whenever it was jerking, I think I know what it was. We're in chill right now.
Oh.
The Cybertruck doesn't like it'd rather be in standard or be in hurry mode. Yeah, it's like very, like, docile, like very skittish. So, but if they are doing the mapping and they're actually mapping that data and having to pass that to the vehicles to actually function in that area, I think that's definitely a much more major issue, because now their scaling depends on them mapping out each individual road, and, you know, they're telling how many passes they have to do, how many times they have to load in that data. You know what I mean? Is it a week-long process, a month-long process? You know, they did the same whenever they did Robotaxi for the Robotaxi launch event that they did, you know, 6 months ago or whatever it was, when they actually used the Robo cabs, for the cyber cabs. So yeah, that again, that kind of brings up some concern. But again, I think they're definitely using that as a short-term crutch, since FSD is, like, pretty much all the way there, but they just need to, like, close some gaps on some things. Maybe they need to route, like, Maybe they're checking for like things like construction or whatever. And in this example, like let's say for instance this became like a more permanent thing. You know, you could technically have an FSD Tesla riding around with a LiDAR, do one with a LiDAR suite on it, right? And we call this the scan car, right? And so even if you wanted to, you could make this car a $500,000 cars and have sensors coming out of its butt. But and just let that car just literally like zigzag through the city, go through every single road on the city. Its only job is to just go through every single road on the city, right? And then through that, going through every road on the city, it like high definition maps out the entire city. And you don't necessarily have to have a safety rider in there. And then that reconfirms your data at a high, what do you call it? Like a high tolerance level, meaning, you know, it's just high tolerance. Whereas camera could be off in tolerance or could, you know, misperceive something or something like that. So again, they may need LiDAR data. So if you see the LiDAR cars and you think that, you know, it's an issue, that might be a potential workaround if into the future they still need to do LiDAR. Now, if it's a first pass ride, maybe they're not able to do that. Maybe they have to do some first passes with human drivers. But again, your cost could be quite expensive for a first pass. If after you do a first pass, like you only need to autonomously do passes after that. So, so again, you know, that's not necessarily a major issue. I am curious. I really wish they'd drop some information on what they were doing with what they're doing with that, so that way we have some direct feedback and we can have some understanding on what they're doing there. I will definitely say that one thing Tesla's trying to do is they're trying to make the thing functional right now. They're trying to generate revenue off of it right now as quickly as possible while they continue to reiterate on FSD and make it even more ready. Like whenever they come out with this, the new model with a lot more parameters, right? That might be the thing that you really, really need to really have it fixed, especially to have it fixed and not have like LiDAR and stuff like that. Anybody who's used FSD and has went from version 12 to 13, like it was a pretty big difference. I mean, version 12 was extremely good. So, you know, probably going from a version 11 to 12 was like a little bit like definitely a major difference. It went from being like completely clunky to now like really smooth and kind of just missing some turns, and not getting over soon enough and stuff like that. So like a lot of like nuisances, a lot of like kind of nuisance types of things. And then you went from 12 to 13 and it removed a lot of those nuisances. And so if we go from 13 to 14, I can't imagine like what else it's going to remove. I mean, we went from like, you know, missing turns sometimes to trying to stop at yellow blinking lights to those going away at version 13. So whenever version 14 comes out, I foresee that we're going to be able to mitigate a lot of other instances that people are seeing, right? Like maybe a bus with a stop sign, right? So I think these other parameters that have been added are parameters to allow the vehicle to see more things. Because I think right now the biggest challenge is it can only identify certain things, right? It's focused on let's drive forward, these lights, left turns, when should I get over for this turn? Is there a vehicle there? How should I handle being next to the vehicle? You know, another perfect example is like the FSD doesn't do a great job at like not staying next to somebody. So if you're like going the exact same speed as somebody, especially on like a highway or a semi, the vehicle doesn't really care to like slow down or speed up. It'll ride next to them for like 3, 4, 5, 10 miles. It doesn't really care. So I can see in that new parameter, it identifies I'm next to a vehicle. I need to either slow down or speed up and get out of this kind of like unsafe condition, right? Just being more defensive in its driving. So I think we're going to see a lot of things expand in that version 14. And I do think version 14 might be the version that, you know, makes it ready. The other thing I would like to add is that one thing that Tesla really, really has that no other vehicle has is they have us as safety riders. Their everyday drivers are safety riders for Tesla. Why? Because Tesla can launch version 14. I can use version 14, and they can not put it in their Robo taxi, Why? They need somebody to validate it. So let us Tesla users or whatever, and Tesla owners validate the version 14 before loading it into a robo-taxi that is not being operated by a human, right? That's kind of like even more unsafe. It's better for me to have supervised version, give me version 14, let me test it out, and they get notifications for my engagements and stuff like that, kind of reiterate on it. So, you know, I don't know if you know this, but like whenever they have a version 14, then they launch out minor revisions of the software as well. So whenever they go from a version 11, 12, 13, 14, that's a major revision. In those major revisions, it completely changes the like base neural net of the vehicle. Now, like with that being said, they can retrain the new version on old video data, but I don't think that they can take any of their learnings. That's cool. I don't think they can take any of their learnings from like version 13 and just directly copy it over to version 14. So whenever they start a new version, they're wiping the slate clean because the vehicle will react differently just due to the new parameters. So I'm kind of getting into like, you know, something that's, you know, a little outside of like robo-taxi and you know, what I foresee in that. But I think all these things are very important for people to deeply understand. You know, for myself as like a robotics person, a programmer, you know, I've done PLC programming, robot programming, you know, vision system, you know, setup and systems and whatnot. So like, you know, that's the core of our business. We build robotics with vision and other specialty purpose machines and welding and stuff like that. So, you know, I understand how like these autonomous systems work at a very fundamental level, and understand how vision works and how their, you know, the parameter data works and things like that. Now, they've not given a lot of insight on how they're like, because like a word like parameters can be very ambiguous, maybe, like basically where it's kind of slightly undefined, right? It has an overall definition, but how it's actually being utilized is another thing. And maybe some parameters are being utilized like this and another parameters are being utilized like that. So without like Tesla directly telling us exactly how the parameters are being used, we don't know. We can only project and analyze like how they're reacting, how they're being utilized. But yeah, we definitely have to see the robo-taxis start to expand for there to be any major stock increase. The delivery numbers just came in. They came in pretty good. But for robo-taxi to really gain that confidence, they're definitely going to have to remove the safety drivers. They're going to expand the geofenced area, and they're going to have to expand the number of cars. Again, I think geofenced area is the easiest thing to do, minus the LiDAR thing, because you're not really increasing your number of riders and stuff like that. You're not increasing your number of riders, safety riders, or amount of taxis you're actually giving. You're just increasing the overall geofenced area at which, you know, you're traveling in. So there's not a lot of expansion whenever it comes to that. It's literally just the area. And I know how well generalized FSD works. So in my opinion, I wouldn't be concerned about how it would perform too much in that area. There's going to be some like issues with like some particular locations where like there's this one left turn on 3rd Street that it doesn't handle well, and so that'll be some things that they'll have to work out and whatnot. But I don't think there'll be anything critical in that area. That's like one thing about generalized FSD. It's like really that good that it pretty much drives itself like 99% of the time, and so, you know, for robo-taxi, it's only going to be a better version of that. I think the only difference between like version 13 that we have and robo-taxi is I think they went in and hard-coded some particular things, or manually trained some things that basically made it so that it quit doing weird things. Like, oh, that's a really weird thing it always does at you know, 4th Street, right? It always does this weird thing at 4th Street. And so they went in there, manually coded, said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Or manually trained, right? I could keep ranting on about different things, right? But so manually coded versus manually trained. Manually coded means they're writing actual code line by line to tell the vehicle what to do. Manually trained means they have like a simulation of the vehicle doing like that turn, and they basically give it like a yes or no command. Yes, that's okay. No, that's not okay. And so they'll run through that, 300 times, 500 times, 1,000 times, how many times they need to, until the vehicle understands, or the AI understands, like, oh, I shouldn't take a left turn like this, or oh, I should get over a little bit before I get to that intersection to make sure that I stay out of some yellow line or something like that, right? But yeah, that's some of the things that we need to see on Robotaxi to really start gaining the confidence. And one other thing that I'm going to mention here, so if you stuck around to the end, this is actually extremely important that you did stick around to the end. But one thing that will happen with a company like Tesla is, as soon as it's undoubtable that Robotaxi is going to be successful and a major revenue generator, overnight, the stock can go up 50%, 60%, 100%. This is something where we could literally see the stock going from, where we're at now. Like now it's down at like roughly $300 a share. We could easily see it at like $600 a share in literally weeks. If we just get like that hint of confidence of like, oh shit, it's here. So like a perfect example for this to happen would be is like, they keep going slow right now for like the next month or two, and then all of a sudden they say, we opened up the geofence area, we removed the safety drivers, and what's my third thing? Remove the safety drivers, geofence. Oh, and expanded the number of vehicles. If they did all three of those in like one blast, one go, even if they did it behind the scenes without us knowing about it, but they didn't let the public know until that one time, that would be an instance where you would see something like that happen. Where it happens in like a very short period of time, like 1 week, 1 month, where like every day you have like a 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, the stock's up, especially if they go on like a roll of reporting numbers, like say for instance, if Tesla starts to release on X, revenue today, and you start to see like those revenue numbers just like growing exponentially, and they start becoming a formidable amount of money, that will then indicate to people like, oh shit, it's here. I have to jump on now. If I don't jump on now, I might miss this wave. Once that starts happening for a company like Tesla, all of Tesla's growth has been this alone. Like, Tesla is one of the most volatile companies in the world. It'll drop 50% in price, and literally like a few weeks later will go to like all new highs by like 20%, 30%, 40%. This would not be the first time this happened with Tesla. Tesla's that type of company, and that's why it's one of the most like speculative companies, in the sense of like, just due to the volatility of that company, that you will make major gains, but you're also going to experience a lot of volatility. And I want to take back the speculative thing, because it's not necessarily speculative. It's just one of those companies that you have to deal with volatility. And you also have to deal with not making money potentially for years at a time, and then all of a sudden making a lot of money, right? So like a lot of people will compare Tesla, and you'll see a lot of investors not invested in Tesla. Like one of my favorite investors, Jeremy, he like kind of came out of the stock. He came out of the stock, and it's because like he don't foresee in the next couple of years that the stock price is actually going to increase. That Robotaxi is going to take multiple years to ramp up and make any substantial revenue. And I do agree with that. However, a stock like Tesla, you don't get to wait until the revenue numbers are there, right? That stock, as soon as the confidence is there, the revenue numbers are there, it's going to go through the roof, and it'll be too late, right? And again, like, you might not make any money for a couple of years, but then it's a company that 2x's in like literally months, So it's definitely a heck of a ride of a company to be invested into. It's one of my favorite companies to be invested into. A big thing for me is I invest in the future. If you ask me, like my number one investment strategy is investing in the future. Everything that's AI related, chip related, and when I say everything, especially the big dog companies, like you already have like your Facebook, your Googles, your OpenAI. You can't invest in OpenAI. Tesla, obviously. These are all companies, Nvidia, AMD. These are all companies that are like chip players, AI players, and this is going to be the biggest growth thing ever. Those companies alone are going to grow themselves, and with AI can give them even 10x growth from where they're currently sitting at, just due to the AI opportunity. Like we're just now breaking the surface of AI, and the one key indicator to that is that billionaires with money to invest into whatever they want to invest into, right, are building billion-dollar data centers. They're building billion-dollar AI compute facilities. These billionaires are not idiots. They're building these things because they know how important they are. That's why investing in a company like Tesla is super, super important. That's why investing in a company like Facebook and Google are extremely important. And Google even has like, the Waymo thing. So Google owns Waymo, or at least a portion of Waymo. And so they're going to have robo taxis, and they're going to have their own AI, Gemini, which I really love Gemini, and I think it has a unique advantage because Google has Google Workspace, right? It has Google Drive, Google Photos, Google all these things. This is another video. I'm sorry I'm ranting on, but today's just like a ranting on morning, I guess. I got to make a more concise video of this. But their workspace and like Drive and Gmail and all those things being interlinked, like you can ask Gemini things. I've asked Gemini like, hey, can you summarize this project that we did? And then like broke down all different types of things. Like here's the installation date, here's blah, blah, blah. And like we're just at the beginning of this. Whenever it gets so much better and like even more usable, like, oh man, it's just gonna be wild. Whenever I can ask it anything and get me, any information I need, it's basically going to eliminate the need for any assistant. You have these editor AIs, like, when we use Opus Clips, that's for like creating shorts and stuff, but there's other AIs that are creating video. It's like wild. Like eventually you're going to have like an AI version of yourself. We already use AI voice generation for myself. So we have an AI version of me that does voice only clips, so future's here, man. Invest in it. Get wealthy by it. Don't just sit by the wayside. This is the difference between this is the investment opportunity of the internet, right? There was an internet bubble, but if you were wise and invested in the right companies, you got extremely wealthy off of betting off of, companies like Amazon and Facebook and, oh man, so many companies. So many companies that came from the internet, right? And like AI is the internet. AI is the next generation of the internet. It is one of the biggest investment opportunities for anybody in the world. And if you can start just like kind of putting some money back into it, diversify, right? If you're not paying much attention to what's going on in the stock market and in different companies and stuff like that, diversify in some of your biggest companies. When I say biggest companies, the biggest companies really winning in AI, Meta, Google, Tesla, and some of those are gonna be a little bit safer plays. A Meta and a Google is much safer and Google's one of the most safest stocks, right? It's one of the most safest stocks, and they still have the AI upside. So the only downside to like a company like Google is they're already evaluated as such a big company that for them to grow, a lot more, it's just not as big of a percentage as like, some of the other companies and opportunities that we have out there. Palantir is another big one that's out there, that's in the AI space. But yeah, this wasn't a very concise video. I'm sorry, guys. I kind of just went on a rambling thing today and got a little off into the weeds about different things. Let me know if you kind of like the videos like that, or if you want to keep them more structured and like kind of bulletined. I'll also try to make another recap of Robo Taxi and maybe have some more bulletin things with it, make it a shorter video. and kind of talk just more in depth on Robo Taxi and not get off into other topics. But yeah, catch you on the next one. Thanks for viewing and subscribe, especially if you watched it to the end, man. You might as well subscribe. Catch ya.